Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In last couple of lectures, we studied uh, some leading indicators and some lagging indicators. If you remember, our lagging indicators included all those matrices that tell us about our past performance. And out of these, we studied cost variance, schedule variance, and then cost performance index and schedule performance index, right? So these were the four matrices or lagging KPIs that we studied to measure our schedule and cost performance of the project so far. So far means, like, let's say there's a project of 10 months duration, and so far 3 months have passed on the project, and we want to see our current performance. When I say current performance, it means what my performance had been during these 3 months, or what my performance had been in the past on this project. So lagging indicators, they actually indicate our current or past performance. But then we also try to forecast our future performance, that what my performance would be after, or what my new estimates would be for the rest of the project. Now, if you see, uh, we this forecasting or the future performance is determined using leading indicators, right? Leading indicators that tell you about the future, and in that we studied like the first leading indicator or matrix that we studied was estimate to complete, and I told you at that time that this is the estimate to complete the remaining work. Whatever work is left, in how much amount you would complete it, that is your estimate to complete. And then there was another term that we studied, that was EAC, that is estimate at completion. Like, currently budget at completion is your current budget, but you want to see, or you want to estimate what your new budget would be based on your current performance, right? You're actually, based on your current performance, you're trying to forecast your future performance. So in this case, we will try to study EAC. And in this context, we also used four different scenarios uh, on which my ETC or my EAC were dependent. Like in the first scenario, we saw that if the problem has been resolved, because of which we were going over budget or we were going under budget. Now we are just that event or that issue is addressed. So now for rest of the project, everything would go as planned, and we call this such a scenario as your ETC at budgeted rate or EAC at budgeted rate. And then second condition was, we assume that if the same cost performance continues for the rest of the project too. Like, whatever my performance had been during first 3 months, it would continue for the rest of 7 months as well. So that was our second, assumption. And in that, we assume that the problem is not addressed and will continue the same performance. And in the third case, we said that if our future performance would be affected not only by our current performance, cost performance, but also by our scheduled performance. So that was our third condition. And the fourth condition, we saw, we assumed that everything, all the previous estimates, they are invalid now, and we need to, establish a new estimate. And for that, we studied ETC bottom up or bottom up ETC. That means estimate to complete the remaining work. To establish this estimate, we again did a bottom up estimation from the scratch for the rest of the project. Obviously, for everything that we have already completed in the first 3 months, we won't be doing any estimation for that. But for rest of the work, we'll prepare new bottom up estimates. So these were the four conditions that we studied in EAC. And then lastly, the last thing that we studied in the leading indicators was VAC, variance at completion. And this was simply a difference between my budget at completion and my new EAC. That means what I planned earlier versus what is my new estimate, right? So this actually defines or gives us the value of VAC. And if variance at completion is negative, it means we would require extra amount. and that extra amount has to be, obtained or requested from the management, and they would obviously, if they approve it, they will give that amount to you from management reserves. So this is what we have studied so far about the leading indicators. Now we are still left with one last indicator, and that is TCPI, to complete performance index, right? TCPI. So this would be the topic of this video now, or this lecture now. So TCPI is to complete performance index. Now let me, start explaining this thing on a new screen. Now, if you look here, TCPI is actually to complete performance index. Just like CPI, cost performance index, uh, TCPI is also an index. Cost performance index, it actually tells you your current performance so far, current cost performance so far on the project. And TCPI tells you about the required cost performance to complete your project, right? So this TCPI is about future and CPI is about the past. CPI tells you your current cost performance on the project so far, whereas to complete performance index or TCPI, it represents the required future cost performance to complete the project. Now, before I actually start explaining TCPI, you need to understand or have an idea of two things. One is the work remaining or remaining work, right? I'm writing work remaining, but you may write like remaining work. Work remaining. Now, how do we actually check or try calculate our work remaining? Now, let's take an example of this project where BAC was the very same example that we have been using in all of the previous topics as well. Let's say BAC was 10,000. This is total budget at completion that we initially approved. Then next thing was, let's say our planned value during first 3 months or first 3 weeks as, let's say 3,000, or let's make it 4,000. I'm sorry. Here's it for you. Okay, let's say our planned value was 4,000. That means up till now, during let's say first 3 months of the project, we should have completed this much of work that we had planned. But out of this, we could actually complete only 3,000 worth of work. That means our earned value was 3,000. We could complete only, let's say, 4-meter wall, and for 4-meter wall, we had kept 3,000 worth of budget. That means this is my earned value. But when I check my pockets, the actual cost that I spent for this work that I have completed is 5,000. That means for a project or for a part of work or piece of work for which I had kept 3,000, or I had planned that this work would be completed in 3,000, I have actually spent 5,000 on that. So that means I have spent 2,000 extra. Now, keep this example in mind, and now let's try to establish what is remaining work, or what is the amount of work that is remaining. So now, work remaining equals to what funds, total funds I have. In this particular example, total funds that I have as, or total work, sorry, work remaining means the total work that I had to complete is indicated by BAC, budget at completion. This is the total amount of work that I had to complete. Out of that, I have completed 3,000 worth of work, and that is my earned value, right? So when I subtract the completed work from the total work that I had to do, this was the total work, 10,000 worth of work. This was the work that I had to complete in the project, but so far I have completed only 3,000 worth of work. So that means 7,000 worth of work is still remaining, right? So this is, the way we calculate work remaining. And how do we calculate work remaining? total work minus the work that we have completed so far. Now, the next thing is funds remaining. In this particular example, remaining funds or funds remaining, if you look at this, funds remaining, this is funds remaining. So how much funds we are left with? So for that, the total funds that we had were 10,000, right? So total funds that we had or we were, authorized to use are indicated by budget at completion again, minus the funds that I have actually used so far. That is actual cost. So now here in our example, the total funds that were authorized to us or budget at completion that was authorized to us was 10,000. Out of this, I have already used 5,000, right? So now I'm left with, or remaining funds or funds that are left with me are also 5,000. So now you see the total work that is still remaining is 7,000, and total, funds that I have are 5,000. So based on this, what do you think? What cost performance would be required? Would it be higher cost performance or lesser cost performance? Now, if you calculate CPI of this part, what is my current performance so far? CPI is equal to earned value divided by actual cost that we studied in the previous lessons, right? Here, earned value is, our earned value was 3,000 and actual cost was 5,000. So in this particular case, what our, CPI would be? It would be 0.6, correct? So that means for every 100 rupees that I spent, 0.6 means 60%, right? So for every 100 rupees that I spent on the project, I only completed 60 rupees worth of work and I wasted rest 40 rupees, right? So because in the past, during first 3 months, I was, wasting a lot of money here. Therefore, to complete the remaining work while remaining within same budget, now I'll have to perform extra. That means now I'll have to, complete 7,000 worth of work in just 5,000 rupees. In the beginning, I was overspending, and now if I want to remain within this budget, then we'll have to perform higher than one. And previously, because we were previously, giving a cost efficiency of 60% only, we were performing at a CPI less than one. So the required performance to complete the remaining work would be higher now, right? Because you had been enjoying in the, let's say, for less first 15 weeks of your semester, you have wasted a lot of time and your performance was less than 100%. So during last week, to cover everything, you will have to perform at a rate higher than one. Okay, at more than, like, now you'll not study just 3 hours or 2 hours a day. Now you'll have to study maybe 7, 8 hours for exam preparation because previously you haven't studied anything, right? So that means if your past performance is less than one, the future performance, the required future performance to complete the work, remaining work, would be higher than one, right? So this is general theme of TCPI, to complete performance index. Now let's come back to how do we calculate TCPI, and there are certain elements that you need to know about the TCPI. Now, as I told you, TCPI, to complete performance index, it represents the required performance to complete the remaining work, right? So now, actually, there are two possible scenarios through which we can calculate a TCPI. Now, one possible scenario is that I want to calculate my TCPI if I want to complete my project while remaining within same budget, right? Our budget is not increased. That means I want to complete this project while remaining within same BAC, budget at completion, right? This was my original authorized budget. So if this is not increased, what would be my required cost performance? So generic formula for TCPI is work remaining divided by funds remaining, right? Or remaining funds. Remaining work divided by the remaining funds. So now this is generic formula for TCPI. Now, in case I want to complete the project while remaining within budget at completion, what would be work remaining? We just studied that the remaining work is calculated by subtracting the work that we have completed so far from the total work. Now, my total work was budget at completion, out of which I have completed this much of work, that is earned value. So if I subtract this thing, like in the previous slide, if you remember, my total, budget at completion was 10,000, and out of that we completed 3,000 worth of work. So we said that in total, the remaining work was 7,000 so far. I still have to complete this much work. So that was that is the calculation of work remaining. Now, how do you calculate funds remaining? So again, the total budget that was authorized to me minus the amount of funds that I have already used, and actual cost represent those funds. So now TCPI to complete performance index while remaining within same budget is BAC minus earned value divided by BAC minus actual cost. Why? Because BAC is the total funds that we had minus the funds that I have already consumed. So that would represent funds remaining. So now in the example that I showed you in the past slide was, in that case, BAC was 10,000, earned value was 3,000, and for remaining work, BAC was 10,000, and out of that we consumed 5,000. So actually, I had to, I'm still left with 7,000 worth of work, and the funds that I have to complete this work is only 5,000. So that means my required cost performance to complete the remaining work would be 1.4. That means I'll have to perform at a cost performance of 140%. That means I have to complete 140 rupees worth of work by using only 100 rupees. I will have 100 rupees, and in this 100 rupees, I have to complete a work of 140 rupees. So obviously that seems very difficult, especially if my past performance, like in this particular case, do you remember on the last, in the last slide, I told you that our current cost performance had been 0.6. That is 60% only. So since I had been, spending extra money so far, so that's why to complete the project while remaining within this original budget, I have to perform extra now. Like in the beginning, so far my cost performance is that I spent 100 rupees, and in that 100 rupees, I actually completed a work of only 60 rupees, and 40 rupees were wasted. And so therefore, for rest of the work, to cover this gap, what I have to do now? I have to, give a cost performance of 140%. That means I'll, in the same 100 rupees, now I'll have to complete a work of worth 140 rupees just to cover my previous bad performance. So now you see, if my, CPI is higher than 1, it is a good thing that my cost performance is good so far. But if a TCPI is higher than 1, it is a bad thing now. Why? Because I have to perform more in a lesser budget if my CPI is greater than 1, right? And and vice versa. If my TCPI is the past performance had been good, like if it had been more than one so far, let's say it was 1.2 so far, the CPI was 1.2, then you would see to complete the rest of the work would be easy. And to complete performance index or the required performance index to complete the rest of the work would be less than one. So a TCPI of less than one is a good thing, but a CPI of less than one is a bad thing, right? This is same as if I tell you so far your performance had been, less than 100%. So obviously I would say that is bad thing. But if I tell you that the required performance is less than 100%, it means you are relaxed now. You would say that, okay, I don't have to, I have some margin to waste the things, right? Obviously, you won't do that intentionally. But point is that now you are not very tight in terms of budget, right? So that is the concept of, TCPI, BAC. Now, next thing is you tell your management this scenario, you just brief them the scenario that so far your current performance index was 0.6 and your TCPI to complete the rest of the work is 1.4, that is 140%. So just let me erase this thing and then I'll explain further. Okay, here now you would tell your bosses as a project manager that see my CPI so far was 0.6, right? So because of this, now to complete the project while remaining within budget at completion, I have to show a cost performance to complete the remaining work of 1.4. So definitely based on my, if I look at my current performance, I can see that this won't be possible for me, obviously. So I tell my bosses or top management or sponsor that look, my performance had been bad so far, and no matter what I do, I at the max I can go up to a TCPI of 1. I just can't match this value at least, right? So in that case, you would say or you would tell your management that, however, if you give us EAC, now you already have calculated your estimate at completion using 4 conditions that were taught to you in the last lecture, right? So now you want to tell, like, let's say our EAC is equal to, let's say it is 13,000, right? Originally, this is 13,000. Originally, your budget at completion was 10,000. So now there would be two, performances to complete the remaining work. There are two possible scenarios. One, while remaining within the original budget, and second, what would be the required performance to complete the work if this new budget is approved? So there are two things. One, TCPI while remaining within BAC, and second is TCPI while remaining within a new estimate, if that is approved. Obviously, not now, but if that is approved, right? Now, if you look at this, in this case, again, the generic formula would remain same. So what is work remaining in this case? Look, the total work that had to be completed is still BAC minus earned value, right? We had a plan to complete a work of 10,000, out of which we have completed only 3,000 worth of work, as per last example. But in this case, the remaining funds would be higher. Like here, in this case, EAC that we estimated using, you know, our one of the four calculations that, we studied in the last lecture. We have calculated an EAC minus what we have actually spent so far. So in this case, if you see, BAC was 10,000 minus E earned value was 3,000. So I still have to complete 7,000 worth of work. However, what about budget? In this particular case, our EAC that we have calculated is 13,000 minus, in case of actual cost, it was 5,000. So now we have 8,000, rupees or dollars available to us. And in 8,000 rupees, we have to complete a work of 7,000. So you see, now things are much easier. The required performance would be, let's say, less than 1 here. Okay, I'm just assuming 0.9. This is not exactly calculated, but now my job would be easier. So what would I tell or present my top management? Now, summing up everything, let me raise this extra here. So when we report our progress to top management, let's say we are doing this using a small briefing or presentation. In that case, I will tell my management that, look, sir or ma'am, so far, my current cost variance is this, my current schedule variance is this, my current cost performance index, that is CPI, is this, and SPI is this. Then I will tell them, I'll tell them about the forecasted values. I would say that estimate to complete the remaining work is this based on so and so condition, one of the four conditions, and the EAC calculated using one of these conditions as 13,000. So now if you if you don't approve my EAC and you ask me to complete the project while remaining within original budget of at completion, I would have to perform or show a performance of 140% or a TCPI of 1.4. So obviously, by looking at my current cost performance, that is 0.6, that is too low, um, I guess it would be unrealistic to expect for me to give this performance. So therefore, you are requested to approve the EAC. And if you approve EAC, see what would be my required performance. In that case, my required performance would be 0.9. So now this is somewhat, looks achievable as compared to my previous performance. Okay, I understand so far my cost performance had been 60%, but still I'll try to improve it to bring it to 90%, even not 100%, but 90%. You see, so that would give top management an idea that what is the required cost performance or TCPI if we don't approve the budget and we ask project manager to finish the project while remaining within original budget at completion, and what would be the required cost performance from the team or project manager if we approve the BAC, right? So these two conditions are shown to project manager and accordingly, to sponsor by the project manager, and then accordingly, project manager, the top management or sponsors, they decide. Now, this is one aspect, major, the major portion of TCPI. This topic we have already covered. Now, there are some, small minor details. Look, we have assumed only one thing so far, and that is a bad thing. Like so far, my cost performance was bad. So far, we have spent extra, right? And the remaining funds are lesser than the remaining work. But it would be other way around too. In that case, going back to your original example, for example, the budget at completion was 10,000 and the planned value was, let's say, 4,000. And let's say out of that, we have completed only 3,000, but my actual cost is 2,000. So I had to complete this work in 3,000, but luckily I completed this work in 1,000. So you see, in this particular case, my budget was lesser, or I spent lesser amount than planned. So that means if I calculate our EAC in this particular case, that would be lesser than 10,000, maybe 8,000, 9,000, or something. So in that case, again, things would be exactly opposite of what we have been studying so far, right? And that is just a common sense based thing. So I hope you can, relate that thing to, like, whatever we have studied, exactly the opposite of what that would happen. Now here, my EAC is 8,000. So that means I can tell my management that you can, take 2,000 from my budget, and you can spend it on some other project or some other organizational need. So that is one thing. Now another thing, let's have a look on the slides quickly, so that if something is left, I may be able to explain that. So now, sorry, it was that's now, to complete performance index is a measure of cost performance that is required to be achieved with the remaining resources. Now, this remaining resources actually depends. Like, do we still have the budgeted completion with us? So remaining resources would be different. Or EAC is approved. So in this case, remaining resources or remaining funds would be somewhat different. So now TCPI is the required performance to complete this. Now TCPI is calculated cost performance index that is achieved on the remaining work to meet a specified management goal. Now this specified management goal would be obviously specified by the management, either budgeted completion. They may tell project manager to complete the project while remaining within budget or completion, or the goal could be to complete the work or project while remaining as within new estimated completion. So if it becomes obvious that PAC is no longer valid or viable, the project manager should consider the forecasted EAC, obviously. So now, once EAC is approved, the EAC may replace the BAC in TCPI calculation. Now, you see, uh, in general, like, let's say our BAC was 10,000, right? And EAC comes to be, sorry, EAC comes to be 12,000 here. So in this particular case, we will require 2,000 extra from the management, and obviously management, if approves this thing, would give us those 2,000 extra from the management reserves. So the moment they approve this EAC of 12,000, this would become my new BAC. If you remember, the definition of budgeted completion of cost baseline was, it is the approved version of the cost, time phase budget of the project and so on. So once your management approves a new amount, that becomes your new BAC, and future performance of your project would be evaluated based on this. I gave you an example of it. Let's say, if you remember, I said that, let's say the deadline to submit your second assignment was the 9th lecture. Because of certain reasons, you asked me to, extend the deadline to the 12th lecture, so I extended it. Now, if someone, like, originally it was 9th week, but now the new EAC that I have approved was 12th week. So now if someone submits the assignment in 11th week, I will not say him anything to him or her. Okay, originally your cost performance was, your deadline was 9th week, so you are 2 weeks late. No, once I have approved the new deadline, that would become my new reference for performance measurement. And if someone submits the assignment in the 11th week or even in the 12th week, I would consider them, going according to the plan. Similarly, when EAC is approved, this become our new baseline or the reference line for performance measurement. So now here is, the generic formula for you. Now, please try to understand this chart. This is important for you. Look, the generic formula for TCPI is work remaining. And how do we calculate work remaining? We calculate work remaining by, this was BAC was my total work. Out of this, I have completed earned value. So BAC minus earned value would give you work remaining. I have already explained this thing on the blank slide earlier. Similarly, funds remaining. Now, this would depend on if I have to complete the project within budgeted completion, this would indicate the funds remaining. But if ESC is approved, in that case, ESC would minus AC would be representing the funds remaining. So this I have already explained. Now, please try to focus on this chart that is in front of you, right? Look, here on y-axis, this is our cost performance, either current or future. One is the baseline, right? When our performance is, comes to be one, a CPI or TCPI of one represents that we are required to perform or we are performing exactly according to the baseline. That means this is the 100% required performance, right? So one represents that everything is going as per plan. I have explained this thing in the previous lectures. Like in the first lecture when I was telling you about earned value management. So now one indicates your reference line. And now here, this is the status date. Let's say this is third month, fourth month, or whatever time it is. This is telling you the status date. And here, up till now, this is my current performance index. Let's say this is 1, this is 0.9, this is 0.8, and let's say this is 0.7. So if I say that our current CPI is 0.7, I'll just put a dot here, and then I'll connect this dot with this. So this, I'm sorry. This dot is representing my current cost performance, right? Now, what would be my future cost performance? That is shown by the dotted line for the rest of it. Now, this is status date. Here, time is passing. Let's say 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months. Up till now, this is my cost performance. Then 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever months are left, I need to forecast my future cost performance. Now, to find our required future cost performance that is represented by TCPI to complete performance index, I have to actually see two things. One, if I have to complete the project while remaining within budgeted completion, what would be my TCPI? Look, here, my required cost performance, my current cost performance was 0.7 so far. So that means if my previous performance was less than 1, my required performance in the future would be higher than 1. So let's say this is 1.1, this is 1.2, this is 1.3. So now my required performance to complete the project while remaining within budgeted completion is 1.3. However, if management approves extra funds and management approves my estimated completion, that is EAC, in that case, my required performance would drop down to 0.8, let's say, right? This is the same case that I explained to you on the last slide. There, we said that, okay, I'll brief the management that, look, my current cost performance is 0.7 so far. And if you don't approve the budget, new budget or new estimate at completion, and ask me to complete the project while remaining within original budget at completion, my required performance would be 1.3. But if I had been so smart, then why my past performance was so bad? So don't expect this much from me. So please approve my EAC. And if you approve my EAC, my required performance would be 0.8, right? So in this particular case, I can tell the management that, okay, I'll try to improve my cost performance in future, but don't expect that I'll improve it to a level of 1.3. But yes, I can improve it to a level of 0.8. So that the chart, shows three things here. One, sorry. Okay. One, it is indicating your current cost performance so far. Now, if you check here, this is, let's say, 0.7. And this is the day on which you are checking your status. So CPI is indicating your current cost performance. Now, there are two things. One, what would be your required cost performance to complete the remaining work if you remain within budgeted completion? And what would be your required cost performance to complete the remaining work if estimated completion or new budget is approved, right? So these are three things that are shown by this chart. And this is the explanation of the chart that we have already covered. So that was all about, TCPI. So now I can tell my management about my, current performance or the past performance so far using lagging indicators, and you have already started those lagging indicators. That was cost variance, schedule variance, then cost performance index and schedule performance index, right? So this indicates your past performance, and then you try to forecast the future performance using leading indicators, and those leading indicators included estimate to complete, and I told you just add two more words here: estimate to complete the remaining work. Estimate to complete is the original term, but if you add two more words like the remaining work, it gives you a better understanding of this concept. Then next is ESC, estimated completion. This is the topic that you studied. Then there was another metrics or leading indicator that you can use to forecast your performance is variance at completion. And then lastly, there was another thing that we just started, as was your TCPI. Now here, I want to show you these three things on a graph. Already we have covered some of it, but variance at completion is to be shown here. Let me show you a graph. Now, look, on this graph here, we have cost on the y-axis, and we have date or time on the x-axis. We had been doing this, plotting this thing. If you remember this line, that is planned value line till budget at completion, this line is prepared during the planning, and we call this line as a cost baseline, right? That line X as a reference. So this was prepared originally at the planning stage. Then our project went into execution, and now let's say 1, 2, and 3 months have passed so far. And so far, this is my earned value, right? You have already covered these things. And this is my actual cost. So that means this would be my planned value, obviously, right? This is my planned value. So now if you see, if I want to look at the past performance, what would be my cost variance? I would say the difference between actual cost and earned value is your cost variance. And the difference between planned value and earned value is your schedule variance. Now, this is one thing. Now, and we started this thing in detail. Now, this dotted line, it shows you your ETC. This is the amount required to complete or estimate to complete the remaining work. Look, how much you have spent so far. Let's say this is 30,000. Okay. Now you want to see that what is the remaining work. This is the work that you have already completed. Let me do it in blue. This is the work that you have already completed. Let's say maybe 15,000 worth of work. Okay. Budgeted completion. That was the total work was of 50,000. So out of this 50,000, you have completed 15,000 worth of work. So this is the remaining work, that is 35,000. Now you want to see that this remaining work would be completed in how much amount. So for that, you say that, okay, so far we have actually, spent 30,000, and the estimate to complete the remaining, work of 35,000, I would require, let's say, this much amount, right? So here, this is 30, let's say this is again 35. So when I say 35, this would become 65. Now my new estimate would be 65,000, and this 65,000 came from actual cost so far, that is 30,000, plus the estimate to complete the remaining work, that is 35,000. If you remember, how do we calculate EAC, estimated completion? It is actual cost that we have incurred so far. In our example, it is 30,000. We have, spent this much of amount, and plus the estimate to complete the remaining work, right? And that is represented by ETC. I hope this concept is clear here. So now that extra amount of 15,000 would come from the management reserves. And here, if you see, this is my budget at completion. Originally, it was, let's say, 50,000. And my estimated completion is 65,000. So the variance at completion in this case is of 15,000 negative, right? This is one thing, 15,000 negative. That means I need extra 15,000 now. This is variance in terms of cost, but how to calculate variance in terms of schedule? Look, originally this was, let's say, first month, second month, and third month. This is fourth, fifth, and sixth month. Originally, project was, had to be completed by the end of sixth month. However, now my new estimate is telling me that this project would be completed in 6.5 months, let's say. 6 months, 15 days. So now these 15 days are indicating the schedule variance at completion, right? This variance at completion is represented by the, this variance at completion shows you the cost variance at completion. And here, extra 15 days is the variance at completion in terms of time. We actually call this extra 15 extra days as schedule slip. Uh, that is a possible delay that we are forecasting, based on our current schedule performance. But obviously, in this subject, our focus is cost performance. So you should be able to understand here that this is my new estimate, this is my original estimate, and the difference between these two estimates indicates the variance at completion. So now that's all about TCPI and BAC. We have covered everything. You may just go through the slides, and if you have any problems, you may contact me anytime, right? So good luck for your exams, and I'm available for any extra sessions if required. Allah Hafiz.